Okay, the live is up. Sergeant, can you begin your recordings, please?
See, recording is up.
Start recording rolling. We look good. Good morning and welcome to today's New York City Council remote hearing on higher education. At this time, will all panelists please turn on your videos? I repeat, all panelists, please turn on your videos. Thank you. To minimize disruption, please place all electronic devices to vibrate or silent mode. Thank you. If you wish to submit testimony, you may do so at testimony@council.nyc.gov. I repeat, testimony@council.nyc.gov. Chair, we are ready to begin.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining the Committee on Higher Education for this very important oversight hearing on single-stop successor programs at CUNY, along with my colleagues, Councilmember Barron and Councilmember Vernikoff. I'm Councilmember Eric Dinowitz, Chair of the Committee on Higher Education and a proud CUNY alum. At today's hearing, we will continue our theme of exploring CUNY through the arc of the student experience. In our first hearing, we discussed programs designed to prepare students for college-level work prior to enrolling in credit-bearing courses at CUNY. Today, we will focus on programs that provide critical support to students once they arrive on campus. Now more than ever, a college degree is essential to ensuring strong employment prospects. CUNY's community colleges offer low-income New Yorkers the most accessible path to a college degree. Yet only 27% of full-time, first-time CUNY community college students earn a 2-year associate degree within 3 years. By that time, more than half have dropped out. One of the major barriers to student success are the non-tuition costs of a college education, such as food, housing, textbooks, transportation, and childcare. At CUNY community colleges, 39% of students have household incomes below $20,000. 35% of students reported having been worried about having enough food in the previous 12 months. 25% reported being usually or always worried about having enough money to pay housing costs. And 5% reported that they did not have a regular and adequate place to sleep. College is stressful enough without also having to worry about your next meal or where you'll sleep at night. Single Stop and its successor programs are designed to help students facing financial insecurity access the benefits they are eligible for. Located on each community college campus and John Jay College of Criminal Justice, these programs provide a central location for students and their families to receive confidential support around food resources, health insurance, legal aid, financial counseling, and tax preparation assistance free of charge. Each on-campus office is staffed with on-site coordinators who assess student needs, determine which public benefits they are eligible to receive, and connect students to other supportive resources such as mental health counseling or access to emergency grants. During my almost 14 years as a public school special education teacher here in New York City, I became all too familiar with the barriers to success caused by the lack of access to resources and institutional support. There's no lesson plan that can make up for a student who comes to school hungry each day. And for a student experiencing homelessness, homework may seem less than urgent in comparison. It is therefore all the more important that governments and institutions such as CUNY step in where individuals and communities may struggle. The recent New York State budget has made strides in this area with historic investments in higher education, expanding TAP eligibility to part-time students, and repealing the ban on TAP grants for incarcerated individuals. At this hearing, the committee is interested in an overview of the single-stop successor programs and their efficacy. More specifically, what is their human impact? The committee also hopes to gain a better understanding of CUNY's financial support services offered through these programs. And lastly, the committee will also seek information related to the current number and status of CUNY students struggling to meet their basic needs and how CUNY ensures that students are aware of the availability of these resources. I'd also like to share that we've been joined by Councilmember Brewer. I will now turn it over to the moderator, who will review some procedural items relating to today's hearing and call the first panel.
Thank you, Chair Dinowitz. My name is Chloe Rivera, and I serve as Senior Policy Analyst to the Committee on Higher Education at the New York City Council. I will be moderating today's hearing and calling on panelists to testify. Before we begin, please remember that everyone will be on mute until I call on you to testify. After you are called on, you will be unmuted by a member of our staff. Note that there will be a few second delay before you're unmuted and we can hear you. For public testimony, I will call up individuals and panelists. Please listen for your name. I will periodically announce the next few panelists. Once I call your name, a member of our staff will unmute you. The Sergeant at Arms will set a clock and give you the go-ahead to begin your testimony. All public testimony will be limited to 3 minutes. After I call your name, please wait for the Sergeant at Arms to announce that you may begin before starting your testimony. For today's hearing, the first panel will include representatives from CUNY, followed by council member questions, then public testimony. For CUNY, we will have Dr. Denise Maybank, Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs and Enrollment Management, Deirdre Polite, Student Life Manager at Bronx Community College, and Patricia Semino-Boyce, University Dean for Health and Human Services. I will now administer the oath to the administration. When you hear your name, please respond once a member of our staff unmutes you. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before this committee and respond honestly to council member questions? Dr. Maybank?
I do.
Thank you. Ms. Polite?
Good morning.
Ms. Polite, can you respond I do to the oath?
I do.
Thank you. And University Dean Semino-Boyce?
I do.
Thank you. Vice Chancellor Maybank, you may begin presenting your testimony when you're ready.
Thank you, Chloe. I appreciate your guidance. Good morning, everyone, and Chairperson Eric Dinowitz and members of the Committee on Higher Education. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony before you on the successor programs to Single Stop USA at the City University of New York. As you now know, my name is Denise Maybank, and I am honored to serve as the Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs for the City University of New York. And I value your interest in and your focus on the services and care for CUNY students. I can't think of anything more important given my role. Your attention to how needs beyond the classroom are addressed is definitely laudable. I am accompanied today by a panel of our university experts best positioned to support me in responding to your interests and questions. Joining me today are Sunday Coward, the University Dean of Special Programs, Deirdre Polite, Student Life Manager at Bronx Community College, and Patricia Semino-Boyce, University Dean for Health and Human Services. You will hear from them later in the hearing as they offer insights associated with services that have been provided through our programs formally organized under the Single Stop umbrella and now being expanded to the other colleges across the system. I will defer to them for responses to questions regarding services rendered prior to my joining the university approximately 18 months ago. In terms of some history around Single Stop, the City University of New York entered into a contract with Single Stop USA that began in 2009 and concluded on June 30th of 2020. In 2009, Single Stop USA received a $1.2 million grant from the Robin Hood Foundation to support the community college initiative at the then five City University community colleges. In 2010, Borough of Manhattan Community College, Bronx Community College, Hostos Community College, LaGuardia Community College, and Queensborough Community College signed contracts with Single Stop. At the beginning of the partnership, Single Stop provided matriculated students and their immediate family members with a robust and holistic set of hands-on wraparound services, including tax return preparation and benefits screening. I mentioned tax return preparation because it's upon us, just as a reminder. Throughout the partnership, there were enormous challenges for the university single-stop offices. Single Stop USA had been in a constant state of high staff turnover, inadequate and inconsistent support for the programs and staff at the CUNY sites, tax preparation issues, and technology that never addressed the needs of the program sites. Even a total revamping of the technology, which was designed in part to capture data from the sites, did not work efficiently. Campuses became dissatisfied with the new technology and created their own individual database collection systems, resulting in incompatible data across the units. Prior to the pandemic, the majority of the core services provided for CUNY single-stop programs moved from in-person to virtual services, leaving students dissatisfied. Little did they know this was going to be the life we would live. These challenges, accompanied by changes in the financial relationship, led to the discontinuation of the contract as campuses found they were positioned to directly provide more coherent and comprehensive services to their students. In addition to the standard Single Stop USA offerings, CUNY Single Stop campuses also provided emergency fund services, food pantries, housing referrals, services targeting student parents, clothing assistance, case management, referrals, and outreach services. As we transitioned to the resource center concept, though we began with 5 and grew to 8 single-stop programs, there are now resource centers at 20 of the City University College campuses and 4 of our professional schools. The resource centers at CUNY provide students with in-person financial and legal counseling, public health benefits screening, health care enrollment, and free tax return preparation. CUNY resource centers also provide emergency fund services, food pantries, housing referral services, targeting student parents, clothing assistance, case management, referrals, and outreach services. In response to the needs of our students, the CUNY Resource Centers have created their own partnerships with internal and external organizations and currently provide services far beyond those previously offered through single stops. Currently, CUNY covers the personnel and OTPS, other than personnel services costs, particularly space and equipment, for our resource centers. All other costs for services are funded through grants, including those of the Petrie Fund and the City Council, or are at no cost to CUNY students through collaborations with internal and external partners and through referral. Most of the resource centers have on average 2 to 3 full-time staff, including a resource center director, manager, or liaison, and only a few have part-time staff. One of our resource centers has only 1 full-time staff member, that's the liaison, and no part-time staff to cover the entire program and manage the food pantry. The engagement of peer volunteers is critical in fulfilling the mission of the resource centers. Students who visit their campus resource centers first provide basic information about their household in terms of numbers of children, average monthly income, in order for a social service professional to work with them in determining necessary services. The student's information is used to identify eligibility for public and community resources. And once determined, staff members help students apply for benefits and resources that may be necessary. They provide guidance on the application process and advocate on various government offices on behalf of the students. Typically located within the resource centers are campus-based food pantries, help by providing food vouchers, referrals, and benefits assistance to students who are food insecure. Currently, there are food pantries at 16 college campuses and 2 of the professional schools. Pantry operations are made possible through the support from the colleges, a generous grant from the Carol and Milton Petrie Foundation, and partnerships with other agencies and community and faith-based organizations, including EFAP, HRA, and GROW New York City, in order to expand opportunities for food and options for accessing food for students. We are especially grateful for the essential funding that is provided by the New York City Council in support of meeting the food needs of CUNY students. Through the Food Initiative grant funding we are provided, our pantries and resource centers have been able to maintain food support for students throughout the pandemic. And that has been critical in the lives of our students and their families. CUNY Resource Centers have also partnered with the Legal Aid Society to provide specialized videos that target areas of interest to the CUNY community. The videos consist of 5-minute segments to be distributed via email and on web pages, and shorter 2-minute segments for social media platforms. Honing in on the successor programs to the original single-stop programs, following are highlights of some of the unique features associated. At Bronx Community College, their Access Resource Center collaborates with the Food Bank and Agatha House to deliver food to students' homes, which has become a part of the experience in all of our lives. Gutman Community College, through Gutman Connect, received an Ally Service Award for, I quote what was written on the award, for exhibiting an extraordinary level of commitment to providing your knowledge and expertise, as well as exemplifying ethical standards and behavior. Queensborough Community College, through their Advocacy Resource Center, has assisted undocumented students and non-citizens applying for a student emergency grant. A grant from the Eugene Lang Foundation provided funds for legal fees, rent arrears, childcare, and personal needs. At the School of Public Health, their resource center, in response to the rise in anti-Asian hate crimes, is hosting an upcoming Right to Be workshop. The Resource Center is also hosting a Health and Wellness Week for students. At City College, their Resource Center is expanding their food pantry location from 1 to 3. CUNY will also, City University, will also open a food pantry on site at the towers and the residential dorm, which is the residential dorm, and at the Center for Worker Education, CUNY's post-secondary education program. Deirdre Polite will give you a view from the lived experience of the Access Resource Center at the Bronx Community College. An important consideration in meeting the needs of our students is the language we use, as it influences how we perceive the need. I am on a personal crusade to end the categorization of food insecurity and housing instability as basic needs. As you heard Chair Denowitz refer to it, no lesson plan can deal with or overcome a student showing up hungry. There is nothing basic about being hungry or not knowing where you can safely sleep and maintain your belongings. These are essential needs and essential for the success of CUNY students. We are about meeting essential needs and preparing students to continue doing so through a lifetime. Approaches on the horizon for where we are headed with making sure that our students' needs are met include working with the Office of Applied Research, Evaluation, and Data Analytics, we fondly call them OREDA, we anticipate the development of a centralized data management system to capture information across the campuses for better tracking and analysis of outcomes, impacts and benefits for those receiving services, and of the effectiveness of the services being provided. This has been a goal since the initial partnering with Single Stop that will come to fruition through the work and advocacy of the resource centers. On August 3rd of this year, and just so you know, it's my birthday, so keep that in mind as well, CUNY will hold its first annual Resource Center Summit at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. The Resource Center Summit is an opportunity for incoming and returning CUNY students to learn about the resources available to them at CUNY. The half-day event will have representatives from CUNY Resource Centers as well as representatives from the central office, CUNY and CUNY-wide resources. Recognizing the need for comprehensive services, strong collaboration, and orchestrated coordination, CUNY is in the process of implementing a pilot program that will aid in offering a structured approach to meeting the essential needs of students. Dr. Patricia Boyce will share with you the overview of our CUNY Cares initiative. So in conclusion, the continued need to support CUNY students as they pursue their goals is unquestioned. The means by which we do so requires commitment, consistency, and responsiveness. We have owned this space and structured supportive services for our students through a comprehensive, coherent, single point of contact service model, made and customized for each campus right here at CUNY. I will leave you with a quote that I love from Maya Angelou. She says, "Surviving is important, thriving is elegant." And we want to be certain that the experience of every CUNY student is elegant with every touch, step, and accomplishment. We look forward to hearing more we look forward to sharing more about our approach and intentions through your questions. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Maybank. Now we will turn to Ms. Polite. You may begin when the sergeant gives you the cue.
Your time will begin.
Good morning, everyone. I am so proud to work for City University of New York. My name is Deidre Polite, and I work at Bronx Community College in the Access Resource Center, formerly known as Single Stop. Our department has been operational for about the past 11 years. I have been able to represent CUNY by receiving numerous awards demonstrating academic excellence, such as the Achievement Award, the CUNY IT Award, and I was interviewed for best practices by Single Stop News. When you do this type of work, you only get to excel to greatness and when you're serving students. The Access Resource Center mission was dedicated and is still dedicated to helping low-income students and their immediate family members building economic security. To this end, we offer a unique program that combines benefit screenings, tax preparation, legal counseling, financial counseling. We work with health navigators so students will have health insurance coverage. Also, most importantly, access to the food pantry and the Carol and Milton Petrie Student Emergency Grant. All of these services are free. So that is a very important word for our students and family. And all of these services are at one location. Thankfully, Channel 12 News has interviewed us at Bronx Community College for our biannual clothing pop-up shops. So we gave out winter coats, We gave out career clothing and just everyday clothing that students needed, that many of us did not know that they had these challenges. We also are proud to have a food pantry that has a wall-to-wall freezer and a wall-to-wall refrigerator. Our space also includes a big stove and an oven for our clubs, student clubs, to cook in. We work closely with the nutrition club, and they're able to use some of the food pantry staples to provide scrumptious recipes for our students and families. So our wonderful students created brochures that contain tasty and healthy recipes that encourages our goal of eating well and choosing healthier food options. Our collaboration with the Dietetics and Nutrition Science Department and the Students Nutrition and Garden Club, it also enhances our mission of healthy food. In the past, many of our directors were hired by CUNY to work with the Office of Single Stop. It was a smooth partnership which allowed us to connect to our students so they can receive multiple government resources. Single Stop was known as a community-based organization. They wanted to help connect students to government benefits. During our relationship, we demonstrated how our student needs differed from the Single Stop CBOs. As directors, we were able to help develop and shape Single Stop to what it is today. Due to the shattering effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, the world came to a standstill, which severely impacted all of us. Some of us got sick, lost colleagues, family, and friends. During this extremely difficult time, CUNY rose to the occasion. CUNY immediately aided staff with the ability to provide continued resources to our students' population during this strenuous time. We were rebranded from Single Stop to Access Resource Center and provided grants to aid students facing financial restraints. CUNY kept faculty, staff, and students safe and found ways to be supportive during this time of need. CUNY has since established Access Resource Center on many campuses, and they look forward to expanding to many more. CUNY truly cares, and because they care, we asked one question: how can we connect our wonderful students who are facing life challenges to free resources that will help them be successful and graduate from college? That question has been answered by the continuous support of CUNY. We are so blessed to work with a wonderful, wonderful colleagues like yourselves that understand the importance of serving our community. In doing so, CUNY provides the best education in the world. Also, CUNY understands the level of commitment required in helping us assist our students in their plight against food insecurity, poverty, domestic violence, and so much more. CUNY listened to our voices and concerns, and together we enhance best practices so we can provide a holistic approach to our CUNY community. We had a great rapport with Single Stop and remain thankful for all of their efforts. CUNY has expressed tremendous interest in providing the best quality of services for their students. Who better understands the students' needs? CUNY. CUNY understands and CUNY cares. So just to give a little example of some of our students and the different challenges they face, we had a student, I'll name the student AJ, and the student was planning to drop out of school. The student was devastated when they came to the ARC office. Unfortunately, the student's wife died. The student had 4 small children, and he worked a full-time job at night. Due to the death of his wife, he had to quit his job to stay home with the kids, and he was trying to figure life out. And all he knew was, this is it. I will not be able to continue my education. I have to leave. He was a student that had a 3.0 GPA, which was great, and he was truly grieving the loss. So we had to take steps to help him. That's what the office is for. So we work with different departments, external agencies, as well as our internal agencies to make sure that this student received financial assistance, applied for many student emergency grants. We spoke with the professors. They worked together with us to make the student successful. We also was able to give him grant money to help him with funeral costs. We were able to give him health insurance. right, and financial assistance and counseling. He also had to speak to our legal aid because he had problems with Social Security from trying to retrieve it for his wife, for his students. But this is an example of some of the issues that students face that cause them to leave their education. So we're so grateful that we have an office that was supported by CUNY, that we can provide these services so we can retain our students and help them make their goals in life, walk across that stage to graduate. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we will hear from University Dean Semino Boyce. You may begin when the sergeant gives you the cue.
Thank you.
May begin.
Thank you. Chairman Dinowitz and esteemed council members of the Committee of Higher Education, I'm pleased to join you today to provide testimony on the CUNY Cares project. My name is Patricia Semino Boyce. I'm the University Dean for Health and Human Services and also a very proud alum of CUNY. The CUNY Comprehensive Health and Essential Services Project, or what we call CUNY Cares, is a new comprehensive approach by CUNY to promote academic success and higher retention and graduation rates by assisting students to overcome or prevent the health and social problems that can undermine educational attainment. Launched in response to the growing evidence that health and social problems undermine academic success and the dramatic increase in these challenges resulting from the COVID pandemic, the project will enable CUNY to pilot and implement models to ensure that more students who enter CUNY are able to receive the lifetime educational, economic, health, and social benefits that a college degree confers. Building on the lessons and accomplishments of several prior CUNY Student Services programs, the project will coordinate and align now often separate student service programs into a system of care that can help students overcome problems such as depression, anxiety, limited access to healthcare, housing instability, and food insecurity, all linked to lower graduation and retention rates. Exacerbated by inequality, poverty, and systemic racism, these problems pose a growing threat to the well-being of CUNY students, their families and communities, and a thriving city, state, and nation. CUNY is preparing to launch a 3-year demonstration project in the Bronx involving the 3 Bronx campuses, Lehman College, Bronx Community College, and Hostos Community College. They collectively enroll about 30,000 students. The project will test a new model of coordinated, integrated, and student-centered care that creates a sustainable system to ensure that all students get the help they need to achieve their academic and health potential. CUNY Cares is starting in the Bronx because its 3 campuses in that borough have already begun to reorganize their essential needs services, creating a cadre of passionate students, faculty, and staff already engaged in transformation. In addition, the Bronx has the highest poverty rates among the lowest levels of residents with a college degree, the poorest health outcomes of any New York State's 62 counties, and high levels of food insecurity, deaths before the age of 65, and cumulative COVID death rates, making it an appropriate starting place for developing new approaches to improve health and reduce inequalities. In its first 3 years, CUNY Cares seeks to demonstrate the impact of this model of care on health, social, and academic outcomes at the Bronx campuses. In subsequent years, based on ongoing evaluation, the model will be adapted to CUNY's other campuses. To ensure that the project is fully integrated with existing campus and university academic and student services, the project will be based at the resource centers on the 3 campuses. Such centers are already established and staffed at the Bronx Community College and Hostos Community College, and in formation at Lehman College. By providing additional resources and staffing, establishing formal partnerships with community-based providers of healthcare and social services, and establishing a strong evaluation and assessment component, the Bronx Project will strengthen the capacity of resource centers to contribute to student success, improve well-being, and a more systematic approach to addressing students' essential needs. CUNY plays a leading role in moving low-income New Yorkers from poverty into the middle class, providing them with the knowledge and skills to advance their careers, support their families, and contribute to the economic, political, and social life of the city. This project will link students to the necessary health, well-being, and social supports to safeguard their success. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Before I turn to Chair Dinowitz for questions, I'd like to remind council members to use the raise hand function in Zoom to indicate that you have a question for this panel. I will now turn it back to Chair Dinowitz.
Thank you, Chloe. So my first question is, I just want to get better clarity on why CUNY ended its partnership with Single Stop in 2020. And I'm asking that because I heard sort of two different things, one from Dr. Maybank, who testified that there was high turnover and other issues with technology, and then from Ms. Polite, who actually said that the system was very smooth and very helpful to the students. So can we just get clarity on why that program, why the partnership ended?
Good morning. I'd like to.
I'm sorry. Did you just a moment? I would suggest that there were a number of things that were happening at the time. And as I said, I was not here when the concerns were raised. And so I'm going to defer to Sunday Coward to help in answering this question as well. And she was coming in as that was happening. But some of the concerns were around how we were going to make certain that there was a flow of information in terms of the database that was not actually functional, and some of the things that were associated with the provision of particular types of services as well. So let me defer to Sunday Coward, if we can have her unmuted, to fill in on that as well, Chair Dinowitz.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Chair Dinowitz, for the question. What we did was, and I think both were right with their statements, of course. Single stop.
I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I did not administer the oath to you. Would you mind if I did that first?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I apologize again.
No problem.
Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before this committee, and to respond honestly to council member questions?
I do.
Thank you. You may continue.
Yes, and so as Ms. Polite mentioned, there was a great relationship. And so I think that some challenges began as Single Stop started to do services remotely prior to the pandemic. And so taxes and other services, legal aid, a lot of things were being done remotely, and students did not respond well to a remote relationship. And but our campus liaisons, Deidre being one, had already began reaching out to others in terms of legal aid, making relationships with the food bank and other agencies locally to help students with food insecurity, with homelessness, with referrals to multiple agencies. And then there was also a concern around the database that had initially been provided with Single Stop, and they weren't able to do that. And so we had homegrown Excel sheets that each campus maintained separately. And so we agreed and we worked with Single Stop. They said they could no longer provide those services in person, but we're still working with some campuses in different arrangements outside of the Single Stop CUNY relationship that was formed at the community colleges and John Jay. And so after that, we looked at all the services that our programs offered and realized that they had an abundance of relationships and collaborative efforts with local institutions and were really serving our students. And we decided to look at what CUNY offers and to bring it under one umbrella, which now is the resource centers.
Okay, I'm gonna get to the services in a sec, but you brought up this database. First, let me ask, so the contract was for 11 years. It was for 2009 to 2020. That's how long the contract was for?
It was roughly 10 years. And then we were looking to build our own program as the program needs and the student needs had grown. So yes, okay. It was 10 years, 09 to 19. And then during that last year, we extended it for 6 months and then looked to just move on to having CUNY take over the responsibilities.
Okay, I just want to point out we've been joined by Council Member Professor Felice. Good to see you. So going back to this database, one of the issues you said about single stop was that there was no database that could be used. It was Excel sheets. Is that to say that you have a database now to address that need that was, I mean, for I guess 11 years of a contract, I guess at what point did you realize there was no database? And then at what point did you start addressing the centralized CUNY database of the students in need?
So that is one of the things that is in development, Chairperson Dinowitz, that our office, our ORETA, as I referenced them, are in the process of making certain that we have a database that is robust enough to look at the standards across all of the resource centers and to build that. So in terms of the when, I believe that happened early, much earlier in the process, long before the 10 years. We were wondering, okay, so when are we going to have the ability to really talk about and look at the data that's associated with the service provision? And it wasn't happening. There was a promise, I believe, that kept being offered about, we're going to get it done, we're going to get it done, but it wasn't coming to fruition. And so at the point that we were negotiating out of the contract, and as indicated, we extended it by 6 months, it just wasn't coming, that piece of it wasn't coming together. And data is critical. We have to have a data-informed process that allows us to meet the needs of students. And when we cannot do that, we are in a down position and at a disadvantage, because we're just flying blind and just saying, okay, we know students need things and we're not going to stop delivering services. But in order to be effective and efficient in providing services, we need that data.
I agree. So just to be clear, what is the status now? I agree in data-informed decisions. What is the status now of having a database of student needs?
Well, there are two pieces of it, and I'll allow Dr. Boyce to address this as well. So as a part of our CUNY Cares initiative, we're looking at developing in the Bronx project specifically, that ability to track information and to understand what it is that's happening as we implement that process as a way to inform what we do. But the ORETA staff are in the process of looking at what the pieces are, making certain that we know all of the, I guess, the fields and the categories that need to be included in a database so that we can build the right thing to give us the needed information. So I'll defer to Dr. Boyce if that is okay, Chairperson Dinowitz.
Yeah, of course. We're here for as much information as possible.
Yes, and building on Dr. Maybank's suggestion here, one of the critical objectives of CUNY Cares is to have a very strong assessment and evaluation component, as she described, to really inform both how the resources are allocated as well as understand students' essential needs more accurately. So we are building and considering this assessment and evaluation function now, building upon what ORETA recommends in terms of ongoing assessment at the resource centers, and also the additional kind of correlating support services that will be provided through those resources, and certainly augment the data that's being collected or will be collected in the near term future.
I will say that as a council member from the Bronx who grew up in the Bronx and went to school in the Bronx and taught in the Bronx, for the borough that is last in so many things like health outcomes and graduation rates, as you pointed out, we are often also last in receiving services from the city and new programs. So that this program is starting in the Bronx, I think is really important and very appreciated. I guess so I'm glad that it's starting. I guess I'm a little concerned that if there were sort of red flags about the single stop program and your contract with them for an 11-year contract, and there were issues with them beforehand, just I guess why the delay? You know, where was the impetus to create this database earlier, right? To unify everything earlier, because it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like right now there are a bunch of different programs that aren't really cohesive on the CUNY campuses that are helpful to kids, but it sounds like we had this also opportunity knowing what Single Stop was doing and kind of knowing where we were going in the future to create that database much earlier on. I mean, is that an accurate assessment?
I believe that that is an accurate statement. I just believe that the people who were here at that time that would have known, you know, what the responses were and so forth are no longer with us and not present certainly today. We can try to ferret out some of that other information. In preparing for today's hearing, we did try to find documents that allowed us insight into what may have been happening then. But unfortunately, as I said, I've been here 18 months. I believe that Sunday Coward, when she came in, it was happening in the moment. She came in 2019. So I'm not certain that we're able to really talk about what was considered or how it was considered with any real lived experience in that. We would only know it from the documents that were shared during that time.
So I want to kind of, I guess, paint a picture just so I know where I'm talking about. If I'm a student that goes to a community college and I am getting services or have a relationship with someone from one of these resource centers and they're helping me, and then let's say I transfer to a four-year college, maybe my bachelor's, right, or somewhere, I have to start that entire process over. I want to. That's what that means when we don't have a unified system, that I have to find these places on my own. I mean, the story of AJ was beautiful. I think it was very sad, but beautiful in that we have the resources to support him. But that happened because he, I guess, confided in a professor, or a professor noticed something. I somehow doubt that if he was at a community college or someone like him and then transferred to a four-year institution, that relationship would magically happen again, and another professor would refer them to the resource center. And then for the student, it means they have to start the entire process over again. So, I mean, I sure hope there's really a drive to get this done quickly and to make sure that's cohesive throughout all the CUNY campuses. And just going back to the services, are all the services that each of these resource centers provide the same?
Let me address your first part, if you don't mind. The resource center leadership comes together as a cohesive group. And one of the things that we have talked about since I've been here is what happens when you move from one campus to another. And that's why the database becomes so critical, because there should be a way to know what services, what needs a student has had when they become a member of a new campus, whether it's within community colleges or within moving to a senior college or to a professional school even. And so the fact that all of the leaders, whether they're managers, liaisons, coordinators, directors, they come together and they share information and they share experience. And in that context, they have the ability to say, well, you know, I've got a student coming your way, and we hope that you'll be able to pick them up. So they can do it on the individual, you know, but we are serving, you know, 240,000+ students. Yeah. So it's not going to happen so much individually, but it does provide that opportunity. The database will assure us a better way of making that transition smooth for students. It's not that they can't find the services. That's why we wanted a unified name. So a lot of them are using the ARC combination of letters. So if you went one place, the acronym may be different, but you know that that's the place to go to get the services. There are some base services that are provided across all of the resource centers. And again, I'm going to defer to Sunday Coward to talk more specifically about what those are. But then there are the unique aspects of what gets provided on a particular campus, because each of our campuses has a unique identity and a way of delivering education and experience to students. And so there are some things that may be different, but there is a base set of services that get provided to address food insecurity, housing instability, and all of those things. So Sunday, do you want to?
Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Maybank. So our campuses do have similar programming across, but as Dr. Maybank spoke about, there are similarities, differences with campus culture. But primarily our students are all screened for SNAP benefits. They do federal benefits, state benefits screening when they come into the office to see what services are available to them. They also are provided with legal aid services. We've partnered with legal aid on a macro level too, and they are now working individually with campuses and providing videos and also individual meetings with students and their families. That's done anonymously though through the program. They provide food pantries, of course, housing referrals. Those are the things that are common between all of them, along with Petrie Foundation funded emergency grants at each institution. So that is represented across all of our resource centers. We have been meeting, as VC Maybank mentioned before, in our resource centers for the first time August 3rd. We will have a huge activities fair at John Jay, where everyone will know what services are available at which campus, and that will include all of our campuses. So students within CUNY, no matter if it's a 2-year comprehensive or senior institution, they will know where resources are where they are at that time, but they can also use some resources at other campuses. So a few years ago, our chancellor did approve allowing all students to use any food pantry, whether it's near them, at their home campus, whatever is convenient for our students. LaGuardia Community College does provide emergency grants to students regardless of campus. And so there are variations at each campus, but we are doing, and I'm very proud of the Herculean effort that's going on at the campuses with very limited staff. And some, as VC Maybank mentioned, only have one staff member to do this, and we look to join in. We also have developed a field placement. We are a field placement site. We have 5 site supervisors at this point who supervise social work interns from local social work programs. And those students, as part of their master's program, are working with our resource centers, with our areas within student affairs, and we're looking to build that out also. So we are quite excited about the collaborative effort that we sustained after we have stopped our relationship with Single Stop.
Can I ask, I know Dr. Boyce wanted to add something, but I just, 3 questions. One is, you said they're gonna know where resources are. How do students know that these resources exist?
So we are in the process of preparing a larger brochure. So students will have a brochure and it will map out what services are available at each college.
And is so SNAP, legal aid, food pantry, housing, referrals are all universal to all these programs. Is childcare support or resources also universal? Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And do you do screening for veterans benefits as well? Is that universal?
We have an office for that, but they do collaborate with each other. So the resource center is aware of all of the services, but we do have individual offices that provide the information to the resource centers and all units within CUNY.
Meaning like if I go, I'm sorry, Chair
Denowitz. I was just going to say that each campus has a veterans resource center that also does that. So because that's a population that we're very concerned about. And so that has been a long-standing offering of the university.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. And, our veterans deserve nothing less than all of the support in the world. I guess my question is, I go into one of these resource centers and they do a screening. It's like, hey, what's your income? Do you have children? Are you a veteran? And then whether that office directly helps them with veteran services or refers them, I just want to make sure that as part of this comprehensive approach, our veterans, they're being asked so that the veterans know to go to the resource center in the first place. That's part of the screening?
Yes.
Okay. Very good. That was it. So Dr. Boyce, I know you had something to add. I don't want to cut you off.
Oh, no, thank you very much. I wanted to add that in addition to the response to your question about our own internal infrastructure around gathering the data and monitoring and informing our resources, and certainly the allocation of those resources to match student needs, we're also working with our partners as part of CUNY Cares to make sure that they're able to monitor the utilization of CUNY students receiving their services. So for example, we're working with New York City Cares, who provide low and no cost health insurance, as well as New York City Health and Hospitals on a dedicated CUNY referral number. And that referral number will allow us to work very closely with them to monitor utilization and, more importantly, follow up with students who actually receive care and services so we can kind of close that loop. So we're really looking at the assessment, monitoring, and follow-up of data at every level.
Okay, I have a few more questions, and then I want to turn over to other council members if they have questions, and then I'll finish up my questions. So one of the things that was mentioned as an example is the right to be workshop, based on the rise in anti-Asian hate that is so horrifying and prevalent in our city and in our country. And that was, I guess, a special program in response to that need. Is there a similar program that was made or done to address the rampant increase in anti-Semitism, anti-Semitic hate crimes, and obviously the anti-Jewish sentiment on so many of our, unfortunately, on so many of our CUNY campuses?
Well, Chair Dinowitz, I'm proud to tell you that that is a project that we are working on very specifically. We have had overtures from a variety of different entities to assist in that process. And I personally have been meeting with some of the rabbis that are associated with our area and our region to identify resources for the conversation, for the dialogue, for the engagement around these issues. As you may be aware, our students were pushing for a statement to be adopted by the university in particular, and we remain committed to making certain that CUNY is a place where all students are honored for their identities, for the intersections of their identities, and that they are able to have the voice that they need to accomplish the ends for which they have come. And so we will make certain that that is possible. When we are specifically trying to address the issues that are right up front for our student population, we are being very careful about talking with them about what's important. I've met with a group of students who are associated with our Hillel programs, and will be following up with them to have another conversation about what we are looking to do and how we're going to get it done. So we have an overture from the Hillel International to provide training for faculty and staff. We are looking at designing a program that employs the work being done across the country in relation to anti-Semitism in the higher education space and figuring out what we do. So our Interfaith Council is working on this effort, and we intend to make a difference. We just had a group of staff come back from a trip that was facilitated to Israel. And so hopefully the influence of that experience will help us in structuring a response as well. So we are definitely about that work and making certain that our campuses are supported in their individual efforts, but we are also looking at it from a centralized perspective.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I trust that this is one of the top issues that it sounds like you're addressing. It sounds very comprehensive, and I trust that, and I want to believe that. I do have to share that that is not the feeling of so many of the students who reach out to my office, and so many of the professors who reach out to me and to my office. They don't feel the support. They feel silenced for their views on Israel. They feel vilified for being Jewish in the first place. And that is reflected in the hate crimes that we see in our own city. And I would hope that with all that work you're doing in CUNY, that work be implemented very soon, because CUNY is supposed to be a place of equity, of mobility, of learning, of understanding one another, of inclusiveness. And based on what people are sharing with me and what I see in the news, it is currently not. So thank you for that. Back to some of the other programs that you provide. How? So I understand. So there are, like anti-Semitism, like anti-Asian hate. There are specific programs based on each campus. Is there a timeline for looking at the expansion of individual programs to all campuses? And can you provide maybe one or two examples of what those individualized programs at an individual university might be?
So we have I guess that's a big question. And so
it's a big question.
We have a timeline associated with the CUNY Cares project as we embark on that pilot. And it's designed so that we can get more information about what and how. Patty, you want to address that a bit?
So, I'm sorry, do you want me to address the issue about CUNY Cares on what level?
The timeline for implementation, please.
All right, thank you. Yes, okay. So we are working right now to finish all of our planning elements for the spring. And excuse me, we are also in the process of hiring our student advocates with some money that we've received from New York City Small Business Services. And we are actually looking at ramping up all of the planning and implementation work through the summer for a very strong start in the fall.
And are there, we use these other schools you're using this as a pilot. And you mentioned before there are other universities that have their own individual tailored programs or supports. Are there any specific programs or tailored supports, as it were, at these other universities that you want to scale up because they're working well or providing a specific need that you're very proud of? And that's helping our students, rather.
Whenever I listen to the directors of the resource centers talk about the things they're doing, I just get excited. It doesn't take much when it relates to students, I'll admit, but I get really excited about this nuance that hopefully influences the behavior of others. I can't, call a particular thing to mind right now, but and I don't know if anyone else, if Deirdre, and I apologize, Deirdre, because I know I cut you off when you were trying to respond to something early in the going. I want to acknowledge that. But if there's something in particular that Sunday or Deirdre might know as a particular thing, I would appreciate that. But I know that there's so much innovation, so much creativity among this population of leaders for our university that it's boundless as far as I'm concerned.
I would raise one good example of something that we're looking to expand, which is in some of our mental health counseling centers, the campus-based mental health counseling centers, we've integrated our clinical psych, mental health counseling, psychiatric nurse practitioner, and other social work graduate program students so that they're actually getting more field-based experiences, but working with the college-based population, expanding our capacity at those local centers to serve our students, and also promoting careers in college-based services for our students who graduate and seek, these types of opportunities. So we're looking to scale that quite a bit.
Okay, and speaking of individualized smaller communities that may need special supports, do you have, whether it's mental health or whether it's connecting with resources, do you make special additional efforts to support students who are too often left behind? Like, for instance, our undocumented students, our students in the LGBT community, for example. Are there special efforts and programs designed specifically for those populations?
Most definitely. We have a recently appointed person who is serving as the interim director of immigrant student success. And her lived experience is that of an undocumented student. So Dr. Carvajal is working diligently to make certain we pay attention, and she keeps us honest in the process of making certain we are paying attention to what it is that our students need, that we are being responsive to the undocumented population in any ways possible. There are a lot of things to which they may not have access, but if there is something that in any way possible affords them a connection, Dr. Carvajal is all over it and making certain she's got the communications going and the questions being asked and the ways to get it done. So there's that. And then we have, within the last year, implemented our LGBTQI+ hub, which is a web-based service link for a number of programs across the university. We have an advisory group and a coalition of leaders that work with that population. There are all kinds of programs across the university at any given moment focused on that population. I will also point to our students with disabilities and the efforts that are in play to make certain that their needs are met in any given way. We have a number of programs that are specifically targeting the neurodiverse population, where it's, those who might not process information in the same ways and need particular supports, in addition to those with physical disabilities that need to be addressed through accommodation as well. We just had our accessibility conference yesterday. I had the privilege of keynoting the second day of that, and it was designed to look at assistive technology associated. So there are a number of different projects and approaches to meeting the needs of our very diverse population of students. And I want to put a point in to make certain we pay attention to the fact that there is an intersection of identity. Very few of our students just come and identify in one particular way so that we can send them off to an office and say, take care of that. It doesn't work like that. We engage whole people, and whole people are complex. And so we have to think about that intersection of identity and how we make it work so that they feel whole as they go through the process of getting an education and their mobility for the future.
Thank you. And I appreciate you including students with disabilities. That was my career for 14 years. I appreciate that. And they are also a population that's also left behind. And I appreciate you talking about the brochures. My concern remains the same. Often people with disabilities may not always go, this has been my experience, they may not always go looking for the resources. Sometimes the resources have to come to them. It was the same issue that we addressed 2 hearings ago when we spoke about remedial courses, which is that proactive outreach to the students, right? A brochure is good, but going up to each student, whether you think there's something up or not, whether you think they have a need or not, making sure they know what's available to them. I have one more question, then I'll turn it over to Councilmember Brewer. How do you measure the efficacy of these programs? Do you measure the impact that they have on graduation rate? Do you measure how much money they bring into to the city as a whole, to each student's on average, bring into for each student a combination of rental assistance and food assistance, clothing assistance, etc.?
You certainly will influence what we do, but I'm going to turn that response over to Dr. Boyce to talk a little bit about why we are doing the pilot and how that particular aspect gets addressed.
Yes, so we are very interested in addressing all aspects of in a very proactive way. So where VC Maybank and Sunday Coward and Deirdre talked about some of the successes we had with Single Stop, the added advantage of CUNY Cares is that it would be a very proactive way that's peer-led, which is really what has proven to be most effective in terms of messaging and engagement of other students, to really identify and share available resources, so that we're really looking to both find students and make those connections. So it really is intended to be a much more aggressive way of identifying those needs that students might have, and then making the connections in a much more collaborative way with our community partners. So we're really working from the outside in, and then really supporting, again, the infrastructure, the connectivity across our campuses, and then being able to distill and scale these best practices.
So great to hear that proactive, really excited for this CARES launch. Is there a way that you are now with these programs, or planning to with CARES, measure I might have just missed it, measure its success?
Yes, absolutely. As I mentioned before, we're looking to have a number of different, we're looking to build a very strong assessment and evaluation component for the initiative that will include monitoring utilization of services referred to our partners. So we're working with partners about, again, how to, measure, report, analyze, and then inform kind of their utilization so that we can kind of learn how to better communicate, coordinate with them on available services for our students. And secondly, to build that infrastructure with really a dedicated evaluation expert that's supporting both the implementation work and the informing our scale efforts for this project. So yes, we are being very proactive, looking at doctoral students and a team of evaluators that will be working with us on the project.
So then let me ask it differently. Single Stop was around for 11 years. 11 plus years, right? At any point during that contract with Single Stop, did you, maybe you do this in college, you do statistics, right? Science control groups. Did you evaluate, hey, this is the group of students coming in for these 2 Single Stop and their graduation rate, they graduated within 3 years. And then you compared that to the students who did not come into Single Stop and saw that there was a different graduation rate. As an example, was that an evaluation or efficacy test ever done in those 11 years with Single Stop?
Great design, Chair Dinowitz.
Maybe I need to go back to college and fine tune it, but yeah.
No, but well-structured question is what I really want to say, and an appropriate challenge of accountability associated with 10 years of invested time and energy. I have not seen anything. I have asked, I have looked. I'm going to defer to Dean Coward to see if she has any knowledge of anything that was done in that way, or to Deidre to see if they are aware of anything. But again, my understanding is that each of the campuses were doing whatever they were doing to determine effectiveness. And we don't have anything that rolled up into a system level. So I'm gonna be quiet because I'm just going off of what's been shared with me from paper.
All right.
So I do want to say, in terms of over the 10 years, Single Stop did provide the database, but our programs also use other systems that we purchased. So we had Titanium that really tracked student performance. We made sure with our metrics, though, that everyone was tracking the basic services. But Single Stop, with their database, did provide us with annual reports. But then as the program kept growing, their system just could not handle all the different services that our students were requesting. But CUNY did fill in those gaps. So we did get reports from the Titanium and the programs that people used. Now students can go on to HRA, they can do access and sign up for SNAP on their phones. Those type of things, because these new services evolve, we can't track how many students actually signed up for benefits from HRA. We do have them use the service, but it goes directly to the site to respond to sign up for SNAP. But we do have them use the site that is available. And so we are working with ORADA to try to figure out how to capture that. We are working with MOUs with HRA to figure out how to capture the data to see actually how many students who not only signed up, but actually received it.
Okay, because as a council, we try to look at the effectiveness of certain programs, and of course we want these programs to be effective. We want students to get housing and food and everything everyone deserves, healthcare, and we also want to know how effective the programming is. So what I'm hearing, what it sounds like is after 13 years of Single Stop and then successor programs that currently there's no way to, I guess, disaggregate the students who visited these help centers, visited these resource centers, and the students who did not.
I think we can go back. So the the particular program that Dean Carroll just mentioned, Titanium, is tied to mental health services. It's tied to our counseling centers. And that would give us some information. Similarly, there may be a system that is tied to a particular campus that would give us some information. So it would require us having a design of assessment and evaluation like that is associated with the pilot we're about to run, to really look back and see what we can do in a base comparison of those who were served versus those who did not take advantage of those services. So there are some things we could probably do in that way, but we want to be more robust in that process by designing a system that takes us forward. We can certainly do the retrospective look because I believe that it is important. But I think that we want to make certain that we have a way of going forward of being data informed in all aspects. It is critical for me as a leader to have that information and to know what it is we are doing. So we are building it. And certainly I've made notes of the things that you've asked to make sure that those things are included at a minimum, but we are certainly looking more broadly as well.
Thank you. And I'll just, as you're including things, my suspicion is you don't have the information, so I'm just going to share with you something that's also important from a financial perspective. If funding is coming from wherever, whether it's from the city council, and there's a certain amount invested, I think it would be helpful to know how many federal dollars and state dollars came in. Or what is a dollar investing in these single-stop programs leverage us and get us from the federal government, whether it's healthcare funding, whether it's Medicaid reimbursements for students with disabilities, Medicaid funding for healthcare, federal funding for food, SNAP, etc. And so I'll add that here with the assumption that that analysis was not done in the past 13 years. I have a ton more questions because this is so important, but I want to hand it over to Councilmember Brewer, who has been waiting to ask her question for quite a while now. So I'll turn it over to you, Councilmember Brewer.
Chair Dinowitz, before we turn to council member questions, I just would like to remind other council members to use the raise hand function in Zoom if we also have questions for his panels, and also to remember to keep question answers to 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair Dinowitz. You're asking great questions. I just have a couple of understanding, because I mean, with these contracts, it's not just CUNY, it happens in technology all the time, no intellectual property. So there was, I mean, back to the Chair Dinowitz's question about the database. I'm just understanding, so there's no database left over. Let me give you an example. People call me 311 because, I know what's going on. And so I remember when Gutman was looking for childcare when they started, and I found them childcare because they had no clue what to do. Now, that was a while ago. But generally, just knowing where there are slots in the area, not everybody has, BMCC childcare center, etc. So I'm a little confused as to how. I'm glad you're doing it, because I never would have hired an outside contractor. Peer-led, internal, we know our local programs. But, you're not reaching out to the community boards, elected officials. I can tell you every program in my district. Councilmember Dinowitz can tell you every program in his district. He probably knows everything in the Bronx. So you need to be, in order to put something together, it could happen really quickly in terms of your information. So I just don't know, are you reaching out? Do you have any intellectual property left over from that contract? And how are you sort of making sure that the CUNY, from disabled to veterans to all the other opportunities, are not in silos? Because that happens pretty easily.
So, Councilmember Brewer, thank you for your observation and for your question. One of the things that I will defer to Dr. Boyce to talk about is within our CUNY Cares pilot is the partnership and relationship with the agencies and the entities that are a part of the Bronx community. And that is the model we're looking to build upon, to make certain that we do know what's available and have the relationships that connect the students to the services they need. So I'm going to defer to her in a moment for that. in relation to intellectual property left from the contract, I am not aware. So I'm going to defer to Dean Coward for that, because I don't know what might have been left over. As she has already indicated, there are reports with information that may be contained. But if we never got to the place where the database was developed in a way that was robust, we haven't necessarily captured that historical information. That doesn't mean that we may not have some report that might help us to make a relationship between what was happening for students then as compared to now, create a benchmark for going forward. But to my knowledge, that is not the case. So I'll defer first to Dean Boyce and then to Dean Coward.
Yes, thank you. We are definitely working very closely with those community partners, as BC Maybank just described, to really help understand those connections for the resource purposes, and also, as we talked about earlier, to monitor utilization of services. So I think it's being designed in a way that's much more comprehensive, adding in that evaluation assessment component, and then being able to match students appropriately with the resources.
What would be an example of a community partner, just so I understand?
Community partner in the Bronx would be Swipe Out Hunger and their local folks on the ground, St. Barnabas Healthcare System, the federally qualified health centers in the borough, the Urban Institute for Family Health, all of them, Montefiore, all of them we're working with.
The only thing I would add would be community boards and good elected officials. We're not all good. But the reason, no, I'm serious. And you know, I have a big mouth. I'll tell exactly who it is. But the issue is, with all due respect, you can have an community-based health center, and they're mostly good, but there's some bad ones. So you got to know that from somebody besides it's on a piece of paper and it exists in the neighborhood.
Yes,
that's really important.
Thank you.
I mean, I like the idea that you're doing that, but get to Manhattan, let me know.
Thank you.
Okay, and then go ahead about the other question I had, which is
intellectual property.
Yes,
thank you, Councilmember Brewer. I do want to say that I will definitely reach out to our general counsel because they handled it, and my former colleague Ricky Miller, she has left the institution. That's who we work with, but I can follow up and get that work and ask very specifically about the intellectual property and what we have, what we're entitled to.
Okay, it's a little scary. I guess I would say for the future, that was a lousy contract. That's not nice to say it. 11 years of a lousy contract. The other quick question I have is, like, how will students be accessing this? Just so I understand, is it all on the phone? Is it a console? Is it a website? Database? How are they going to access all this information under CARES?
Time's expired.
Patty?
Oh, yes, I'm happy to respond. So we're looking at the resource centers being that kind of point of contact, and the resource centers at each campus are providing kind of information that'll be online, so digital, the students, as well as these definite referral partners on the campus. Again, leveraging the expertise, the peer advocates, and the dedicated resources that are on that campus in the resource center.
It'll be a real office, and then in addition, it'll be online. Is that sort of what you're saying?
Yes.
And who's doing, and then I'll stop because I know my time is up, but who's, like, for instance, the algorithm to me would be, first of all, you got fewer students. You need more. Bottom line, BMCC is way down. So the question is, how do you make it attractive? One way I would make it attractive would be try to make sure there's childcare slots for parents coming in. So, or something like that, whatever the interest is, veterans, etc. How do you do that kind of outreach? In other words, what will be the algorithm? So knowing that there is availability, maybe the BMCC childcare doesn't take care of everybody. So who's in charge of figuring out what does, etc. So who's in charge of all, how do you do that?
I think, as VC Maybank said earlier, that each campus is somewhat individualized, both in the population they serve, the resources they have, the community referrals, and connecting points that they can access. So I think that would be really determined by the population served at those campuses, though we're looking to standardize the approach so that that assessment, that intake is relatively consistent across campuses, and then the access to referrals as well as support services are individualized to the students' populations at those campuses.
Okay, and then will there be, like, it's one thing to go online and then the childcare center is not available, and I could go on and on. So what is, like, hotlines, 24-hour, weekends? Resource center is nice, but I know BMCC runs 7 days a week. I don't know if everybody does. So
Right.
how do you make sure that this is a really robust opportunity, not, the usual bureaucratic?
No, it's an important question, and that's why we're looking for dedicated staff to be really the project directors on campus, understanding this is a real enterprise that needs to be operated at the campus level. So really a kind of understanding kind of how that will work.
And finally, I would just meet with 311, that's Office of Operations, do it, I never know who's, and have them be also available to the students. In other words, when a student calls 311, which they might, what is it that they can offer the student? Sometimes they forget that that's another constituency.
Right, and we would work with our resource centers about the connecting points with 311 and other locally available.
I'm already getting calls from the press about what's going on at John Jay, just so you know. So there's interest in this, and it better be good. I only care about Manhattan. Everybody knows that. So good luck in the Bronx. And Aaron only cares about Brooklyn, and this one only cares about. I'm very low, but I'm gonna fight for BMCC to get started on whatever the hell they're supposed to be doing, and Gutman and John Jay, just so you know. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Brewer.
I can do the whole thing. You just give me any location in Manhattan. I'll take care of all your resource centers. Thank you.
We will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will now turn to Councilmember Barron.
We'll begin.
Thank you very much. First of all, Gail, I care about everybody, no matter where they are. So don't try to hook me in with you in your narrow Manhattan view. I wanted to alert you to something. I spoke to John Katowski about it when the chancellor was on. But when I was in the State of Assembly, I got $20 million allocated to what I call the Martin Luther King Scholarship Fund for non-tuition cost for SUNY and CUNY. I don't know whether it's 10 million a piece or what. And I looked to see if it was actually in the budget, and it is. It is in the budget, and they put it under. What I think they did is they said that they designated some of the federal money to be used for that. So look into that, because non-tuition costs is more than the tuition for struggling students with TAP and Pell. You know, when you add childcare, when you add food, transportation, and fees and all of this stuff, that can be well over the 6,000 and change, whatever the tuition is. That can be 10, and don't forget the textbooks.
Yeah,
Once you include the textbooks, you're talking $10,000 easily. And I would say more, but just to be conservative, 10,000 more than the 6,000 tuition. So students have to make a decision: do I eat or get a textbook? You know, and those are tough decisions. So look to see. And I looked and I saw what it actually said. I just want to read this to you real quick. It said said Chapter 50, Law of 2021, for payments in support of higher education services, projects, and operations, provided that no less than 20 million of the funds appropriated herein in each of the years 2021 and 22-23 of the academic years shall be used by the state and city university to provide such things as non-tuition costs as food, housing, healthcare, including mental health, childcare, and so on and so forth. This is in the state budget. You know, the state always do legislation with budget, which is crazy. That's how they get over. They bribe you to, if you want your budget item, then you better vote for this legislation. But it is in there. So check it out to see if that money can be accessed, you know, to deal with the non-tuition costs that you are so adequately or focused on dealing with.
I want to first say thank you, Council Member Barron, for your advocacy in that regard, because it is critical. When we talk about the essential needs of students and making sure that they have the elegant experience of thriving, resources are critical. And so knowing that there is the allocation of $20 million in the MLK Scholarship Fund for the purpose of non-tuition costs is really important. I am certain that all of the people who are supporting us today in the background, John Katowski and Stacy Emanuel, all of those folks have made a note. I am certain, and we'll follow up with them to see how we access those resources for CUNY students.
Yeah, look for it in the budget, and it won't say Martin Luther King Scholarship Fund. Okay. That's what I said, you know. Okay. And then when I present it to them, so it'll just be allocated as a $20 million allocation, and out of the federal funds that were allocated. So I sent the copy of it to Katowski. He has that, so I'm sure working with him to see if we can access that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Barron. Thank you, Councilmember Brewer. You know, I just have to say it. I have to say it. I'm on Team Brewer. I have a lot of pride in my borough. You know, when you're on the mainland, you tend to have a little bit of pride. I won't speak for anyone else, any other council member. But Councilmember Barron brings up a good point, just to kind of piggyback on what I said before. It's really important that we know how much money is coming in, how much from this program that is being invested in. And I sure hope that there are people out there beyond, this goes to that same question, beyond the SNAP and legal aid, food pantry housing referrals that are available, and everyone knows about it, these resource centers, that there are these other pockets of money, whether it's a fund that Councilmember Barron secured in the state budget, or maybe it's private grants, maybe it's students who need the internet, and Optimum has discounts for certain students. There are, you know, also, you know, it's fair fares, right? There are all sorts of other resources available that really need to be universal. So I highly encourage you at your meetings, Dr. Maybank, you mentioned that the directors of these programs will have these meetings, that as they're developing a common database, that they also, of student information, they also create a common database of student resources that are going to come from city, state, federal, and private entities. Speaking of database, do you have demographic breakdowns of the individuals who attend the resource center and receive services, or even inquire about resources from the resource center? So, you know, obviously race, ethnicity, age, gender identity, religion. Do you collect that data as well?
I'm going to let Deirdre talk about, because her voice has been so silent in this process, I'm going to let her talk about what they collect on her campus and how they can access that. Because once we have a student's student identity number, whatever it was called when you were in school, or whatever, you know, whatever we're calling it now, whatever that identifier is allows us access to that information. But how it's managed from the resource center perspective is the piece that I believe you're asking us. So Deirdre, do you want to chime in and answer that one?
Yes. At the Access Resource Centers, we do collect demographic information. That's very important, so we get an idea and give data to show the different areas by zip code, what the needs may be, and also to provide services. We do not collect information on any religions as of yet, because we want to keep all their information confidential, and we do not want them to feel that there's any discrimination when it comes to different cultural backgrounds, because many students are not comfortable with providing that information. But we do our best to collect different information, keeping it private, as well as getting a number that it does not connect them to their private information specifically, but it lets CUNY know what services are being used, maybe services that we have to change it or adapt to different things. But we're very flexible when it comes to serving our students and all of their needs.
Can I rewind for a second? Because I'm a little, thank you for that answer. I'm a little confused about one part of the answer. You collect information about ethnicity, and they're cool with that, you're cool with that, they're cool with that, everyone's cool with that, everyone's comfortable. Immigration status, we already spoke about the UAssist students who are undocumented. That's cool. culture, background, but they wouldn't be comfortable with the religion question. Can you go a little more into that? Because I'm a little confused.
A lot of students who come into our office, they do not want to identify with different religions. They tend to leave that blank. And it's an option.
But you ask for it. You ask for it. That is okay. So blank is an answer. Chooses not to respond is totally appropriate answer. And I imagine some students may also say the same thing about their race or their immigration status or country of origin or veteran status or disability status, that may be the same sort of answer. But you are collecting that information. Is that information that's publicly available?
Well, we identify them to a separate number, so it doesn't identify exactly who the student is. And then, yes, the information is made public to CUNY, and they deal with the data correctly, the way they want to use the data.
Right. I meant in the
aggregated data.
Aggregated data, yes, of course. So X% are from these different countries, Y% is of this religion. Does CUNY share that information publicly on its website? So not with CUNY internal, CUNY external.
There's no context in which we would do it from the resource centers currently. I mean, I don't know, as we talk about what we develop as a database, as we work through the pilot and think about what it is we are doing and what the best means of evaluation and assessment will be, there may come a time where we say, we know that in aggregate, this % of students use services that, students in these categories use services. And so, you get a profile. So students that use the resource centers are predominantly women who are in this age range, who may represent these ethnicities. So there are ways to get there, but at this point, there's nothing that specifically is linked to the resource center services, which are a developing experience. That is tied to demographic data. I saw you light up, Dean Boyce. Were you wanting to jump in on that?
No, nothing specific. Okay. I was in full agreement with everything you were saying.
Okay, all right. So it's something that I think we have to look to.
Yeah, I mean, because you and I agree that data can be informative. And if you see disparities between survey data and students accessing these resources, or number of veterans to be at CUNY and number of veterans utilizing these resources, that is one way to know the work that has to be done in order to reach out to our students. Or if we see that one ethnic group or one gender or one religion is utilizing these resources significantly more than others, that should be a red flag that either you're doing something right, that you're engaging many students, or that there is a large need that has to be addressed more robustly. But that's the sort of information that I would appreciate it being shared with this committee if you have it. And of course, CUNY should be publishing on their website like they publish so much other data. I mean, that's the type of stuff that helps all of us as a city look at CUNY and look for places to improve, because CUNY is about all of us. CUNY is about the educational opportunities for everyone. And it's also about the future workforce of our city, the future fathers and mothers of our city. So we want everything, every piece of information that could be helpful to be out in public. So I would ask for that information. And of course, if CUNY can publish that online. And speaking of information, do you see that one resource or what areas are in most need? For example, when students come to the resource center, that for the most part, they're asking for food benefits, or they're mostly asking for mental health support. Do you see trends in the sort of needs students have?
I don't know if Sunday you want to respond to that?
I think it's really the food, housing are the two largest issues, and Deidre may want to add some more, but those are really the two biggest needs, and really having students apply for SNAP benefits and any benefits they're eligible for federally or state.
Yes, the Sundays, definitely, Dean Coward is correct. We have students who definitely come down for multiple services, such as that was stated, food pantry, the housing, mental health, disability services, legal counseling, as well as emergency student grants. So they come down and they fit the criteria for all of the services at the same time.
Oh, okay, but you don't see any, I mean, besides like food, housing, those are, in your experience, Deirdre, the kind of two that you see the most?
Yes, I think each borough can speak differently about what they may see. But for the Bronx, definitely evictions. That's number one for the Bronx. And then it's food.
Yeah. The other thing I'll bring to your attention, Chairperson Barron, is that our Healthy CUNY project looks at what our students' needs are and publishes various papers and white papers and other scholarly documents talking about what we know. I don't know if Dean Boyce wants to address that, so I will leave that to her to say something more about.
Yes, thank you. We do surveys on a regular basis with Healthy CUNY. There were surveys done during the height of the COVID pandemic, I should say, in April 2020, April 2021. What we found, similar to other universities, is that CUNY faces obviously an enrollment crisis, which has been compounded through COVID. And what we found in most recent study of fall 2021 was that we're really challenged by both enrollment because of students' essential needs that really aren't being met so that they can't pursue their education, and really looking at some of the specific issues. So for example, 14% of students reported housing problems in the last year. 20% of students reported 2 or more problems that consisted of mental health problems, food insecurity, sexual and reproductive health problems, lack of access to care, and also a struggle to pay rent and move to being homeless. So it's really been exacerbated through COVID, but we do, as VC Maybank pointed out, keep a kind of a close watch on what the students are telling us so that we can address our resources appropriately in terms of these needs.
Right. I mean, I think that goes back to the type of outreach that's being done. You know, if a student says they're struggling with food, and then I know everything's, the way outreach is being done has changed so much, but if a student's struggling with food and then they don't enroll for the next year, and I don't know if you call them up and ask why, and they say it's food. I mean, do these conversations happen where you say, hey, did you know we have food pantry? Hey, do you know that we'll sign you up for SNAP?
Yes, they do happen. And we actually were very proactive during COVID. We expanded access to food pantries across campuses. So if you may have attended one campus, but lived in a different location closer to another campus, you were able to access food pantries at that campus. So we really tried to kind of democratize the access to all resources independent of where students lived, if available across our CUNY system.
That's wonderful. And then you did that outreach. You called the kids up on this. I'm so used to teaching high schoolers. I always call them kids. I don't mean the college students or kids. It's just 14 years of a career. It's hard to shift. Students, young adults, older adults. That proactive outreach was done. So the expectation is that if I go to a student on campus and I stop them on campus, I could say, hey, are you aware of the resource center? They should have received a phone call from, I don't know, a counselor, professor, someone who's working on campus?
I can't speak to the existing kind of methodology of how a campus does their outreach, but I do know that there's been a concerted effort for campuses to reach out for students kind of lost to their education, meaning that we want to understand why you left, how we can kind of support you coming back. And also our resource centers are really attempting to see how we can kind of connect more diligently with those who are failing to progress in their program.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Dr. Maybank.
I just wanted to add to that. The reality is high impact practice requires high touch. Mm-hmm. And we need to be about high impact practice for the population of students. who are accustomed to just figuring nobody's paying attention to me, no one's coming to my aid, but we can do that within the City University of New York system. We aren't necessarily staffed for it. You heard us talk about the fact that there are resource centers with one person. I mean, they can touch as many as they can touch, but it is going to be a limited touch. This has to be something that we arm the entire force of CUNY with the information to support our students. And so that's why the brochures are important. The brochures aren't always about the students, whether they're digital or otherwise. It's about getting the information out there so it's in the hands of faculty, it's in the hands of staff, it's available to peers so that they can share that information as well. But that's about informing everyone about what is going on, creating the websites, creating the experience and the access. I go back to something you were saying before about the data and how it benefits the council in doing what it does. I believe in the power of CUNY, and I believe in leveraging that power and making certain that we provide you with the things that afford you the opportunity to provide us with the support we need to make a difference in the lives of our students. And so we will be about that business, I assure you, because I want you to have what you need so that you can give me what we need to do what we need to do. So.
I appreciate hearing that, because CUNY is how I became a teacher, right? It's how so many of our public servants got to where they are, is through CUNY. I believe in the power of CUNY. It's where so many of my former students went, and I so appreciate hearing your commitment to sharing data. The latest available data on retention and graduation rates from the first year is from the first year of fall 2018 cohort. So at last glance at the website. So is it possible for CUNY to update the website to reflect the data that Dr. you and I both know is so important?
Yeah, and I'm working with Arita. We have access to dashboards and so forth that give us more current data, but I'm aware of exactly what you're saying, because I went out there looking for something to share as well and realized we have the 18-19 cohort out there. So I hear you. Right. And and I need you to know, I too am a CUNY alum. I get to sit in the seat because of what happened for me as a first-generation college student who went to Brooklyn College, rode the 3 train from one end to the other to get that education.
Nice. You are
first generation, and I'm a nurse from CUNY. We all live the mission.
All right. I'm afraid to ask everyone else who's on this panel, because I think we'd all, in one way or another, raise our hands. I know two of my colleagues, Councilmembers Brewer and Oswald, who are Councilmembers Brewer and Felice, pardon me, who are on this committee, are adjunct professors and another CUNY alumni here. So we'd be here all day, and it's wonderful. And that's the story of CUNY, and that's why it's so important that residents and the council and everyone has access to that information. It is, in 2018, we have a brand new council. Very few of the current council members were in the council in 2018. The mayor was not the mayor in 2018. Yes, that's the most recent data. And just one other thing about the data, it's a lot of the data is presented in averages, things like income, household income, for example, and not to get too into central tendency, but mean and average can be skewed with outliers, and so it's very hard to make sense of some of the data. Can you include median household income as well?
I'm going to certainly ask.
I mean, some of these questions I almost feel silly asking, but they're basic questions. Can you include data? Can you have up-to-date data? Can you have the data that makes sense, including median, and not just household income, but student experience data, income, any other data that makes sense to have as much information as possible. And going back to those questions about demographics and a database, because it's with that information that we can help make informed decisions of how best to support our students and our faculty. And very quickly, are these resources available to faculty? Food pantry, help applying for SNAP, housing services, legal aid?
My understanding is that they are, yes.
They are. At every campus, these services are available to faculty?
My understanding is that I remember this came up during COVID, Chair Dinowitz, and I do remember that faculty were also offered the opportunity to access these resources.
And was that a COVID only thing? So many things that happened during COVID
I don't know. I can't speak to that directly, but we're happy to follow up on that.
Please follow up. And as you're developing CARES,
yes,
it should include faculty, because
yes.
I don't have to.
Yeah,
it is the sad truth that many faculty members may be facing eviction, yes. And although they have a job, many of them are adjunct professors who are, of course, getting paid much less than they should be. Many of them are making those same choices so many of our students are facing, not to mention the mental health crises that so many of our students and our faculty are facing. So as you're developing CARES, I urge you to include faculty members in the offerings of services.
Will do, thank you.
So these programs, can you talk a little more about where the funding comes from or how these services are funded?
The CUNY CARES, are you asking?
Both CUNY CARES and the single stop successor programs.
I'm happy to discuss the allocation of funding or the planned allocation of funding for CUNY CARES, if that's okay.
Well, let's start with that.
Okay.
And then maybe we'll get to the successor
Sure.
programs as well.
Sure. So I can give you a quick breakdown. The budget for the first year of CUNY CARES is approximately $1.134 million. About 13% of that funding is coming from a foundation that's going to support 2 key staff members, the project director and the project evaluator, again, reinforcing the fact that the evaluation is critically important to the success of the project. About 21% of that funding is going to come from federal pandemic relief support to the 3 Bronx campuses. 15% from we've already secured from New York City's Small Business Service Award to support SNAP and other benefit enrollment for CUNY students. That also includes our hiring of the CUNY peer advocates, the student advocates. And about 6% is already accessed from a Mellon Foundation Award to Healthy CUNY to enroll students in SNAP. And lastly, 44% of the expected funds will be obtained from the fiscal year 2023 budget to CUNY from New York City and state governments. And I could say that we are confident that we have about half of the funds needed to start for fiscal year 2023.
Okay, so we said 40, sorry, the last one was 44% from city and state government?
Yes.
Okay. So, and how long are these grants for? What are the...
And we're talking just for that first year of startup, knowing that we are actually trying to secure longer term investments for both the Bronx demonstration project, which is intended to be a 3-year project, and then the scaling to additional campuses over the coming years. So we're focused on that first year right now. There has been some approved state monies, mental health services and others that we feel confident can, a portion of that can be allocated for some of these services back at the campus level as well as at the university level. So we're working with city and state budgets and our partners now at CUNY Central to see how we can manage the allocation of funds to support a fully vested first year of this initiative.
Okay, yeah, because I'm looking at the 21%, for example, 21% federal relief support.
Yes.
That's, you said COVID federal relief support, right?
Yes.
I don't imagine that 20% is going to be there next year, right?
That's the concern. It's like we can use the stimulus dollars while we have them, but they run out, and we have to find a way to support this. I believe that, the beauty of what CUNY can do is leverage the private public engagement. And that's what we have to be about. And so we've got this infusion of money right now that it may be stimulus related. It's supported by a private connection as well through the foundation, but we have to figure out where the public support comes in to make certain it carries forward and is sustained.
Right, and I'm looking at the same thing with the SBS grant. Is that a COVID SBS city grant?
I'm not sure.
Is that a grant?
Yeah, I think it was some from yes, monies that were received to support, because there are very specific criteria in terms of supporting relief for students and others involved in that grant. So I do.
Yeah, so I guess so as this goes back to sort of the evaluation, which is if this is a program that costs 1.13 million but is bringing in 20 million, it's for the students and for the city, it's almost a no-brainer. But do you have plans to address the 36% that will almost definitely not be coming in the coming years?
Yes, we're working right now at CUNY Central to talk about the allocation of funding for the future years, minimally for the 3-year demonstration project, and then for sustaining that project for the long term, not just in the Bronx, but for scale.
And is part of that work reaching out to other private entities like you have for this 19% of your funding?
We're actively engaged with threading all of the funding streams that we can pull together to support this effort. And as VC Maybank discussed, we expect that there'll be continued partnerships, private and public, to support these efforts going forward.
Okay. I'm just looking at those numbers and I have a lot of concerns about this what sounds like a great idea and a lot of work going into it being unable to function because so much was relying so much on stimulus money, right, that it becomes unsustainable, and it just becomes another great idea with no follow-up. And what ends up happening is our students suffer, and our students, like AJ, who was mentioned in the opening testimony, won't get that support, won't become a nurse.
And that's why the evaluation is so important, because if we can best demonstrate outcomes, both for the students' success and the services that we receive, we feel that we'll be best positioned to receive the funding and seek funding going forward.
And remember, public data, sharing the data and not waiting 5 years to post it on the website. And robust data. I'm not a statistician, but I imagine there's one that works for you who can tell you what the importance is of what the important data are to include.
So Chair Dinowitz, I want you to know that based on today, in addition to my campaign for changing the language to say essential needs, I am advocating for you to get credit for prior learning as it relates to statistics.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. So I guess I got New York City public education. What can I say? So we spoke about kind of that outreach, and there seems to be, you mentioned the brochures and the website. I still think there's a lot more to do in that proactive outreach post virtual learning as students are coming back, that it's not just based on a professor having a hunch that a student has a problem. But part of that, I think, part of the reason that I saw in the classroom of students not seeking out the help is because there's still a stigma against, let's say, mental health needs. There are stigmas against having a disability. And of course, not helped by our former president, a stigma about your immigration status, right? Stigma about, as Ms. Polite was saying, maybe identifying your religion or your ethnicity because of things like hate crimes, which so many communities are experiencing. So in addition to the proactive outreach to students, which I urge you to do, what steps is CUNY making to mitigate the stigma of those seeking help or seeking, whether it's with immigration help, whether it's with mental health, whether it's with food, any public benefit? What work is CUNY doing to mitigate that stigma?
So one of the things that we have to pay attention to is how we tell students they belong at CUNY. I believe that the extent to which we can create a space that says to students, you matter here, you belong here, we are engaged with you, we have entered into a partnership for your success and for your future, that says we support you. And so one of the things that we are looking at and talking about within the context of student affairs is the ethic of care that we put forward as a part of the culture of CUNY, and making certain that all campuses, all offices, all individuals transmit to students a clear message about belonging. That way they can find that person. Not everyone's going to go to just any office. Not everyone's going to come to the resource centers. But if we can create that ethic of care across the university, there'll be someone everyone can connect with. And I sincerely believe that. I don't know if it's just my optimism, my role as a counseling psychologist, or just basic stupidity. I don't know what it is, but I believe that we can get there, that we can make that happen in a way that causes a student to say, yeah, I'm not going up in that space because of what it says on the door. And that stigma is just a part of their internal experience and functioning and, you know, what may have happened in their lives. I can't walk through that door. But the person that helped me with my financial aid is someone I can at least ask a question of. And I will do that. And if we can get people to the place where they are responsive and have the information they need or know how to find that information, we are better positioned to meet the needs of our students. So I think it's in culture. I think it's in making certain there are people available, whether it's in some of our dorm spaces and there might be a person there. But it's arming everyone with the information that supports our students.
I believe that, you know, in your heart, that is that culture of care, that ethic. I believe that that's you know, that's there for you, and that's so important to have, to lead with that, to lead with your heart, to lead with empathy. And with that is the question I always have of what does that look like? So I know you mentioned in the dorms is another great place to start. I have particular concerns again about those, you know, if I'm a vulnerable student, I put vulnerable in quotation marks, but if I'm a student who's attending part-time, I'm not spending as much time on campus. I'm not living in a dorm. That's just one area where the students who probably have the most needs to begin with may have least access to the areas where those brochures would be, least access to the professors who would find them in the first place, least access to the dorms. I know Councilmember Barron mentioned textbooks and the cost of textbooks. Again, a student who's attending part-time, who's not on campus as much, may not know or may not think to or may not be able to access the library, which is such an incredible resource. Yes. Free books. I can't believe that libraries exist. It is one of the most incredible things on the planet. Free books. Can you believe it? But I urge you to think about not just the students we typically think about. When we think about students going off to college, they go to a dorm, they're there in class, spend the whole day in classes, but that's not the reality for so many of our CUNY students, especially community colleges who are attending full-times, who are parents, who are working, and who need a lot more support, a lot more outreach, and a lot more care. I'm going to leave it there, except if you can, of course, send over the list of the centers you have at each of the schools, because I think the list on the website is not comprehensive, because the list you testified to seems that there are many more centers and the locations and the resources available. And of course, all of the other things, including the data that were discussed at this hearing. And I want to thank you, Ms. Polite, Dr. Boyce, Dr. Maybank, and Ms. Coward for your testimony and your answers and your help today. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Chair Dinowitz. We have concluded the administration's testimony and will now turn to public testimony. First, I'd like to remind everyone that I will call up individuals in panels. Once your name is called, a member of our staff will unmute you and you may begin your testimony once the Sergeant at Arms sets the clock and gives you the cue. All testimony will be limited to 3 minutes. Remember that there is a few second delay when you are unmuted before we can hear you. Please wait for the Sergeant at Arms to announce you may begin before starting your testimony. And in order of speaking, and if I mispronounce your name, please feel free to correct the record with the correct pronunciation. We will first have Dr. Mojibola Olufunke Okome from the University Faculty Senate. Second, we will hear from Heather James from CUNY PSC. Third, we have Onikachi Okeke from the Young Invincibles. And lastly, we'll hear from Lisa Nishimura, also from the Young Invincibles. I will now call on Dr. Okome. You may begin once the sergeant gives you the cue.
You may begin.
I hope my time would count from now. I wasn't allowed to be muted before. My name is Mojuba Olufunke Okome, and I'm a professor of political science who teaches women's studies as well as African studies also at Brooklyn College. I've been teaching at Brooklyn College for 21 years. So I've gotten to know CUNY quite a bit. Today, I'm representing the University Faculty Senate, and thank you very much to the committee for allowing me to speak. I have said before, that the most important thing to understand about CUNY is that it punches way above its weight. So CUNY does a lot with very limited funding. And it has really laudable aspirations for which we should praise all the people that are making it work. However, I have to say that I think the CUNY that one experiences depends very much on many circumstances that cannot be controlled by anybody on this committee. It's about class, about social capital that people have built. It's about ethnicity. It's about national origin. It's about whether you are documented or undocumented. And I think it's clear that many of the services that are being offered are essential. They are crucial for the success of students. I think also one of the things, I have to be frank, one of the things about CUNY is that we have multiple campuses. And then there's a central administration running programs that would span all the campuses in an equitable manner. I believe, I'm a political scientist, is challenging. And we also have an enormous student population. How do you reach or touch each one of these students, especially people who are working full-time and then they run to class, they do their classes, they run home to take care of family, and they have issues with sustainability of access to food and housing, and maybe even mental health challenges. So I believe that CUNY needs a lot more funding, a lot more staffing. And we need to also develop a way of communicating with all the members of our community. Because, okay, my time has expired. So I just want to say that more is needed. I admire the people doing the work, but better is needed. And I would have given anecdotes, but my time is up. I'll put it into my report. So let's support CUNY. Let's also make it an extraordinary place for every member of our community. That's an aspiration we still have to fulfill. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Okome. We will now hear from Heather James.
Your time will begin.
Thank you. I apologize for coming in and out. I seem to be having some internet issues, but I am here on behalf of the PSC CUNY, which is our faculty and staff union. And first of all, I want to thank the committee for holding this hearing and for your interest in the student experience. And also Chairman Dinowitz for your great questions. I think we've had some of those questions ourselves as a union and would really appreciate some more data. So that's great. Thank you. Given the enrollment situation at CUNY's community colleges, I teach at the NYCC, we've seen, I think, a shift on the part of the administration and on faculty and staff and on the part of the council to really increase discussions about wraparound services to bring people back and also to help keep them. Wraparound services have always been really critical, but with the COVID mental health and economic crisis, they're more important than ever. From the union perspective, I think CUNY had some real wins in the state budget, but less was allocated to advising into mental health counseling than many of us, I think, had hoped. So these are areas where the city can step up as part of its effort to reconnect CUNY students and also to retain them. At the MCC, where I'm a professor, we have ARC, our Advocacy and Resource Center now, and that's a really valuable thing for us to be talking about. I am quite familiar with ARC, right, which we formerly called Single Stop, because I frequently referred students there. We all have 2 paragraphs about it on our syllabus. And as others have said, I especially see questions about rental assistance, homelessness services, and mental health counseling. So typically that conversation begins with me asking about, hey, your paper's late, are you okay? And then the student will disclose, oh, I'm homeless. I can't pay my rent. I'm getting kicked out of my house. And so in these cases, completing any assignment becomes overwhelming and the conversation has to completely pivot because the student is just trapped in this struggle to survive. But these are the kind of people we have at community colleges where we are really helping folks who are struggling to have a better life. And so I'm really just humbled every day as a CUNY professor by my own privilege. And so I really want to register my support for getting more funding into ARC and for just really thinking more holistically about connecting these services to each other and increasing baseline funding, not one-time CARES money, right? As you said, not a one-shot deal. Baseline funding for advising, mental health, childcare. These things have long lacked funding and it's desperately needed. We have many disparate services, but a lot of it staffed by part-timers, sometimes even volunteers are involved, and we can do more with sustainable investment, with more full-time people doing this stuff. So I think this is really important, and thank you again.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we will hear from Onikachi Okeke.
Your time will begin.
Hello, everyone, and good morning. My name is Onyekachi Okeke, and I'm a senior attending Hunter College studying human biology and sociology. And also, I'm a proud alumna of the Borough of Manhattan Community College. So when I attended BMCC, I struggled daily, often enduring the day with nothing to eat, no money to purchase anything. And on top of this, I was unable to secure a job both on and off campus. So naturally, I camouflaged the struggle with my studies and my extracurricular activities, but I still bore the daily pain of not having sufficient support. So in my last year, I was blessed with the opportunity to learn about Single Stop, which is now known as the Advocacy and Resource Center through a friend. Locating Single Stop was easy in the Office of Student Activities. It was a popular location for students. It had everything I needed and more. Due to substantial support of Single Stop, I obtained semesterly Metro cards, and I was in dire need of this. Food vouchers to purchase lunch from BMCC's cafeteria, groceries from the campus food pantry, and free tax filing preparation services. And I was so grateful for this help. So the next year when I transferred to Hunter College, I sought out the same support, expecting to see it there as well. I was shocked to find out that Hunter did not have this resource center that I had relied on, and a Single Stop only existed in select community colleges. As someone who attended both a 2-year and a 4-year school, I'm here to say that the necessary support Single Stop provides students is needed everywhere. Single Stop is a one-stop resource hub where students can utilize the services from a wide range of areas instead of scrambling to find them in different offices. As a member of my school's student government, I personally have borne witness to many students who require and badly want a center where they too can take advantage of the robust support given to me at BMCC Single Stop. My story is just one of thousands of students who experience this but do not have a platform to share their sentiments. Currently, 48% of CUNY students endure food insecurity on top of other crucial expenses such as transportation, rent, and much more. This statistic is highly alarming and can be rectified. So I'm asking my city leaders today to fully invest in the accessibility and expansion of Single Stop for all CUNY campuses. Every CUNY student is more than deserving of help throughout their time in college, and their ability to succeed and thrive while attending CUNY is a direct reflection of how much our city chooses to invest in them. All 25 campuses of CUNY must have a Single Stop center, and for the resource hubs that currently exist, they should all be financially supported to ensure that there will be enough aid for all student participants during the duration of their college career. Lastly, this ample support will boost Single Stop's visibility, thereby attracting more students to learn about and use the services so no student again will be deprived of or unaware of needed support. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we will hear from Lisa Nishimura.
Your time will begin.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lisa Nishimura, and I'm the New York Engagement Coordinator at Young Invincibles. I want to thank the New York City Council, especially the Committee on Higher Education, for the opportunity to testify at today's hearing. I'm here today to share my support for Single Stop successor programs at CUNY. Single Stop played a crucial role in my college experience at John Jay. Single Stop provided me with the resources to continue my academic career and navigate upscale government applications with ease. However, after graduating in spring 2020, aside from John Jay, I learned that Single Stop is only available at select 2-year community colleges at CUNY. Hearing the news that Single Stop was only offered at these limited campuses, I was devastated because not only has this resource helped me, but also many other of my peers to get through challenging moments in their lives. During my last 3 years of attending college, I was met with intense financial hardship. I worked 3 different office jobs, hoping that I could make ends meet to support my parent and I. I experienced food and housing insecurity during this time period and did not know where to turn to for concrete support until a staff member on campus mentioned Single Stop, describing it as a one-stop shop for all of my needs. With the help of Single Stop, I was able to submit an application for the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, formerly known as SNAP, fill out Section 8, and find potential housing resources. Single Stop was there for me when I needed it the most. I'm not the only student that has questioned where their next meal would come from or if they would have enough money to make rent. More than 60% come from families with annual incomes under $30,000. According to the Healthy CUNY survey, analyzing the impact of COVID-19 on CUNY students, more than half of those students reported their household's ability to purchase food had been reduced. For many of those students, having a Single Stop hub on their campus means having the opportunity to have their essential needs met and graduate on time. Therefore, I urge the New York City Council to expand this program to all CUNY colleges, given that CUNY students are still experiencing the detrimental impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Having resources such as Single Stop would allow for students' basic needs to be met in one department, instead of being given the runaround as so often governmental departments, for example, do. I thank you again to the Higher Education Committee for allowing me to speak with you today and share my experiences using an essential resource like Single Stop.
Thank you for your testimony. We have now heard from every witness on this panel. I would just also like to note that if we are missing any other witnesses who would like to testify, to please use the raise hand function in Zoom so that we can call on you. Otherwise, we accept written testimony, which will be reviewed in full by committee staff, as long as it's submitted to the record up to 72 hours after the close of this hearing by emailing it to testimony@council.nyc.gov. Chair Dinowitz?
Thank you. I first want to thank our previous two panelists. One of the issues, I think the last issue I brought up with the administration with CUNY was that at times there is a stigma about saying, I need help, whether that's with food, as was mentioned, or with housing. But when students like you and people like you speak out and share that you had a need and that you were helped by someone, it makes it easier for others to then go out and look for that help. So I want to thank you for that. I also want to highlight from Ms. Okeke's testimony that she found out through a friend about this program, which is a totally acceptable way to find out about these programs. But again, as I mentioned to CUNY, it really should be front and center that students should know as soon as they get into college that these resources aren't available, so that there's no time spent wondering, as Lisa said, where your next meal is going to come, how you're going to worry about your parent, how are you going to pay your rent. That information should be front and center. So I'm going to continue to urge CUNY to do that proactive outreach to students so they don't have to wait for a friend to happen to tell them about the programming that exists. I saw that Councilmember Brewer did have her hand up. I don't know if she still has a question that she'd like to ask.
I am still here. Thank you very much. Yes, I wanted to understand, even down the line when people say they have housing problems and somebody tried to help with Section 8. I just think that in general, we should figure out if that really is something that gets addressed, because I heard that #1 request was I guess mental health and housing. Not surprising. So I think we should just be cognizant as a council and as a city that, even though we may think that the folks in CARES, know a lot, that these are complicated issues, and I'd like to know what exactly are they referring to and how are they handling it, et cetera. So that's getting in the weeds, but these students are our treasures and our jewels, and we want to make sure they can get through 4 years. I teach in Hunter. I have to say, during the pandemic, this was the extreme, but when the dorms emptied because persons who had COVID were coming in, there were literally no places for people to go. And so we were all scrambling as professors, paying hotel rooms, because that's the level at which we were operating. So God help us if there's any other kind of a challenge in terms of our city, but I think there's no time to be wasted to get these care centers up and going. And I think it would be great for CUNY to rely someone on us elected officials on the community boards for information, because we really do have it. This is what we do. It was fun to save a lot of time on your database, your IP, et cetera. Thank you very much. Congratulations, Chair.
Thank you. And so just if I know it was only 3 minutes, if either of the students, can you just share a little more? Do you think that these CUNY single stop programs, besides not being available at Hunter, adequately addressed the needs that you had? You came to them, did they adequately address your needs? Or if not, what areas could have been improved upon to provide you the help that you needed at the time? There's Ms. Nishimura and Ms. Okeke.
So I'd like to say, right, so for me, when I was at BMCC, yes, so I really struggled a lot. There was so many times I couldn't even, I had like no way to get to school. I would have to ask the chamber person if I could, if I could go through the turnstile because I had no money for transportation. Also many times, like I didn't have any money for to eat something. So I would just be looking at the cafeteria, wishing that I could be able to eat something. And so when I found out about single stop, I was really happy. Like I felt it had everything that I really needed during that time. And I wish that I had known about it before, but it's okay because when I finally was able to use the services, it really helped a lot. And I also was able to tell other students about it as well too. And so I think that this office, this resource hub is so important. And like I said before, how I'm a member of my school student government. I've been able to talk to so many other students and they express the same kinds of things that I experienced when I was at the NYCC. And even now, and they wish that they had the same things that I was able to obtain. So I think that this is so important. And not only that, but I recall when some of the other panels were speaking about how it's some single stop offices are understaffed. And I do understand because there is a problem with staffing amongst different offices, amongst CUNY campuses. So I do think that when we have more staffing, it will be able to increase the level of outreach to students. So I think that's really important. Awesome. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know, Lisa, if you wanted to add anything to that. You don't have to. Yeah.
Oh, no. Yeah, I just wanted Onion to speak first, of course. But of course, I'm an alumni, so it's been a while. But during the time that I did use single stop, I mean, I kept thinking about how, at least in my family, like we didn't want to use any of those services. As you were saying, like there's a lot of stigma when it comes to, relying on like governmental assistance. And when I told my parent about single stop, initially she was like, I don't know about this, but I had to make that executive decision for our family to be like, all right, I'm going to utilize these services. Let's see what we can get. And applying for SNAP, that was a really great thing for me because of course, like you go through these governmental applications and oftentimes you don't know what to fill out and you don't know how to navigate these applications. And to have somebody on staff to help you through the application, help you through even talking to people on the phone, being like, well, I have some of these questions I really don't want to ask, and I'm a little afraid to ask and advocate for myself. They were able to do that for me. And so I honestly do think that single stop should be expanded. I think there are still things that need to be changed. I think at John Jay, when I was there was only 2 full-time staff. I believe there was a manager and then there was also a case manager as well. So I think that there still needs to be, a lot more staff, a lot more full-time staff, just given how big like each of these CUNY campuses are, especially at John Jay, we have like 15,000 plus students. And a lot of those students do go through food insecurity, housing insecurity. And I've known students who, are homeless or who were homeless at the time. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to get any help in terms of my housing, but when it came to food, that was still a huge help. But of course, there's a lot of barriers because my circumstances, it's very different from other people's circumstances.
Right, and that's why we would hope, and that was kind of, I think, when Councilmember Barron was testifying about this particular scholarship in the state budget, and glad to see CUNY was writing the information down. That's why we hope the professionals there and the staff members there so you want more staff, but that they kind of know about all the resources and not just want to help you, but are able to help you all in the best way possible. And for what it's worth, it sounds like you made the right decision when it came to getting that help. Not knowing anything about your situation, it sounds like you made the right decision because now you're here testifying, and I deeply appreciate your testimony. And I know that both of you said that these programs weren't available at Hunter. I think from from what we saw on the website, they were only available at certain community colleges, but during the testimony, CUNY said that they're available at, I think, 24 of the campuses. So one of the questions we asked was, for a list of all of the centers and their locations, because to answer one of your concerns, yeah, it should be expanded, and if it is expanded, I think that's great. Councilmember Brewer, I don't know if you have any more questions. I don't have any more questions, and if not, I can turn it back to Chloe Rivera.
Thank you, Chair Dinowitz. Seeing no one else raising their hands to testify, I will just, another reminder that you may submit written testimony, which will be reviewed in full by committee staff up to 72 hours after the close of this hearing by emailing testimony@council.nyc.gov. Chair Dinowitz, we have concluded public testimony for this hearing.
Thank you. I just want to thank, of course, the staff, Amy Briggs, Chloe Rivera, and Sergeants Bradley and Hope. My staff, Mike Corbett, Jenna Klass, and of course, CUNY and our panelists. Look, we know our students, you on this panel, are more than a GPA, and our CUNY campuses are about more than the four walls of the classroom. So it's really vital that our CUNY campuses are not only providing a world-class education with great professors and curricula, but that they provide that education through support of the whole student, and that these wraparound services are vital to the success of our students and their families and our city. While that's clear, what's not clear is the path these programs will take. Heard CUNY testify about the CARES program that appears to be a step in the right direction with cohesive approaches to supporting our students, utilizing the combination of public and private funds, having a cohesive database of information about the students. But there's a lot of work to do, right? Something as simple as updating the data on the CUNY website and providing the right kind of data that that needs to be shared. Sharing a common database throughout all campuses, so that if one student goes from a community college to a four-year college, that they still continue to get the help that they need. That CUNY is proactive about reaching out to students and ensuring that they know all of the resources that are available, so they don't just have to wait for a friend to tell them, or they don't have to wait for a professor to see if they're struggling, or the student doesn't have to wait till they pass by a brochure in the hallway or in the cafeteria to know about these programs. So I'm looking forward to working with the students, the professors in CUNY, to ensuring that this program that we all agree is so vital to the success of our students, that this program is successful and actually provides the support that all of our students need and deserve, and the support that it is meant to provide. And with that, this hearing is adjourned. Thank you.